Hey everyone, you're listening to the Business Bootcamp podcast. I'm your host, Mike Andes, and today we got something special. A few days ago, I was at FinCon in San Diego, and just meeting up with bloggers, podcasters, financial advisors. Just a really great event. There was 1,200 people there, and had a great time. And on Friday, or Thursday, Thursday, it was Thursday, at the event there, I was listening to, there was all sorts of workshops and things during the day, and then we'd have keynotes in the evening, and then I spoke a little bit Friday evening, and so it was just a great time. But like on Thursday, we had the workshops, and one of the workshops I went to was with Adam Carroll, and he talked about how to make money speaking, specifically to college students and millennials and things like that. So that kind of brought what kind of got my interest and attention. And so I wanted to bring him on the show, and so that's what we're going to do today, actually, is I'm just going to play you a live audio clip of Adam Carroll and I speaking together at FinCon, and you can hear ambient noise, and you'll see sometimes him or I will be talking, we'll kind of get distracted. It's because people are walking by, so like Chris Ducker walked by and other people that I knew, and so you kind of get distracted while you're talking, so forgive us for that, but and forgive the ambient noise of the hallway and everything. But it was a lot of fun to record live there. Kind of never done that before, and so definitely you're gonna get a lot out of this one if you want to do any sort of speaking. Now, if this has no interest to you and you're like, I never want to speak in my whole life, maybe this isn't the podcast episode for you. We will have Q&A here in a couple days on the next episode 120. But today, if you do want to learn how to speak, or you are interested in that, just feel free to listen. Really, this podcast, I was a little bit selfish on this one. I wanted to pick his brain, and I figured I'd just record it and give it to you guys as well. So definitely a must listen. And like I said, if this isn't of interest to you, we'll get back to our regular programming on the next episode. So sit back and listen to this one. It's a good one. Adam Carroll, I heard his speaking a couple days ago here at FinCon, and essentially I was like, I need to learn more about that, so I'm going to bring him on the podcast. And that's just another reason why so many out there, if you wanted to do a blog or you wanted to start a podcast or a YouTube channel, it's just such a great idea, because you become an authority of a platform, and you're able to speak to some of the people that you've always dreamed of speaking to, or you really think you get a lot out of it. So once again, Adam, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Mike, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here with you, man.
All right, so a couple days ago, I was listening to you speak about, being paid to speak, essentially. So just tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, so I spend about 50 or 60 days out of the year speaking on college campuses and teaching financial education to college students all across the country. And I've been doing it since 2004, so in 12 years, I've been on about 700 college campuses. And have been everywhere from Florida State University on the East Coast to the University of Spoiled Children on the West Coast, and everywhere in between. And I love what I do. I get to impact lives and have fun, and get to do what I love to do, which is be up in front of people sharing ideas.
Okay, now a lot of people share ideas and everything, but you actually get paid to do it, and you do it as a job. So that's what we want to talk about that today.
Yep.
How did you get started, though, is my question. Because right where I'm at right now, I have the book, I have the podcast, we have a bit of a platform,
Yep.
But I would love to have more interaction face-to-face, and
Yep.
especially with millennials, people in college, talk about entrepreneurship and present that as another opportunity for them going out of college and into the real world.
Totally. When I started, I had the benefit of being in a speaking business and being an employee in a speaking business. I worked for a division of Monster.com, and that sort of opened my eyes to what was possible. Monster put us in high schools and colleges all across the country, and in about 2 years' time, I spoke to probably 200,000 students. And in doing that, I got the benefit of, number one, cutting my teeth on delivering a message over and over and over again and perfecting it. And number two, I realized that those environments are looking for people who can share really high quality information with their, in this case, their students, right? Whoever their audience may be. So after I left that job, and candidly, 9/11 happened, and Monster cut 30% of its workforce, and I was sort of put back out into the working world. Yeah. But I had sort of whet my appetite for being a speaker. And at that point, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I think at about age 27, I just realized, like, this is it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Yeah. And then I continually pursued ways of making that happen. And for me, that meant writing a book and creating a product around that book or a program that I then took into high schools and community colleges and colleges. And I would say for your listeners, the way to begin is begin. Mm-hmm. Go out and call schools, call associations, call corporations that may be looking for speakers. And then I live by this philosophy of the more you speak, the more you speak. Yeah. So the more people see how good you are, the more they're going to share the message. And that's exactly what happened over 12 years.
So what exactly did you do with those colleges and universities? Like, how did you pitch them? How did you get in? What's kind of the process of doing that?
Well, when I first started, like way back in 2004, and I was just a fledgling speaker, right? I did not have all of the bells and whistles that I do today. I had a really crappy website, and I'm sure I didn't have a one sheet, which is just basically a front and back PDF that's well designed and tells what you do for your talks. I was literally smiling and dialing. So I had a list of all the colleges and community colleges and high schools, and I'm just picking up the phone and calling and saying, here's who I am, here's what I do. Is financial education important to you? Right.
And who are you trying to actually contact? What position or title?
Yeah, great question. I was calling at the time the campus activity directors on college campuses. And generally I was talking to either the principal or a counselor at the high school level. The high schools at the time were going through No Child Left Behind. And teachers were like, I'm not giving up an hour of my time to talk about money of all things. Right. So we bailed on the high school idea and really went full force into the college market. And believe it or not, the first 3 to 5 colleges that said, yes, we're interested, it sort of felt like we're fishing with dynamite. This is the easiest thing ever to make a couple phone calls and they pay us $1,500 or whatever it was at the time. But we loved what we were doing. We were sharing the message and we started getting more and more referrals that way. Schools would see what we did and they would say, oh, who you need to talk to is so-and-so at this other university. Yep. And we would say, would you mind making that phone call for us and doing an introduction? And it just sort of grew from there. But I will say this, it's a sales job. Right. Just like everything. You're an entrepreneur, a business owner, you got to sell stuff. Yeah, yeah. And we did too. We sold our speaking services for years.
So as far as topics, what exactly were you presenting to the students and what were you kind of pitching to the activity directors?
The program itself was based on a book that my business partner and I co-authored called Winning the Money Game. And it's a rule book for young people to achieve financial success. And the book itself, it's I would call it the preamble, right, to the Constitution. And my new book called The Money Savvy Student is sort of the Constitution for this age demographic. But we were saying, listen, we're going to come in and we're going to have fun and it's interactive and your students will walk away with some really tangible, tangible ideas of what they can do with money. And we did that and had a lot of interactivity. We used a lot of sarcasm. We had workbooks at the time that we gave all the students and realized at some point we could bail on the workbooks. We didn't really need them. Mm-hmm. But it was just a really nice, package that we were able to sell into the schools, and the schools ate it up.
Awesome. So like I've already, I heard your speech a couple days ago, or the workshop that we did. Yep. I've already contacted my school that I went to.
Nice.
And so we're already in talk with them. But like talking about when you start out, whether it be speaking or any sort of this kind of profession or in front of people presenting, when it comes to price, like did you just come up with a number or I know now you charge at least, $5,000, $6,000, whatever that is now, but you mentioned $1,500. Like, what was that starting? Did you at first do it for free? Right. Because we hear this whole exposure thing, do it for exposure. What's kind of that timeline for you that you saw?
When I first started, so with Monster, it was interesting because I was paid, I think it was not a great deal. I mean, it was like $200 an engagement. But okay. I was so excited just to be doing it.
So that was from Monster or from the school?
That was for Monster.
Oh, okay.
And then I was an independent contractor with them to start.
Oh, okay.
And then what happened was I ended up getting hired on as an area manager. Okay. And they were paying something like $36,000 a year or something like that is what I was making. Again, I was just excited to be up in front and doing my thing. Yeah. But I had done so much of that I was good, right? I could hold my own on stage. I held people's attention and all of that. And then when I went out on my own, right before I went out on my own with the money game, I was mentored by a speaker, and he heard me deliver a message at one point, and he had booked me for this gig, and he said, "Oh, I'll pay you $500, or you'll get $500, but I get 25% of it," right? And I made $375 that day, and I was just like happy as a pig in slop. I was like so excited.
Yeah.
And I got in the car, we were driving back to his office, and he said, "You're a $1,000 speaker right now, as it stands." And I think hearing that gave me some validation that that's what I'm going to charge, that's where I'm going to start out. And then I slowly just started progressing from there. But even here at FinCon, I've talked to people who said, well, I got, I'm getting 1,000 or I got 2,500. And one of the ladies here who has a book on the bestseller list, and she's been on Today Show and Good Morning America and all these. I'm like, how much are you charging? And she said 2,500. And I said, no, you're at like a $7,500 price point, if anything. And she's a really good speaker. And she said, oh my gosh, I never would have believed that I could get that kind of money. So some of it's a mindset thing. Okay. And I would say that you don't want to have this very high opinion of how much you're worth and then be a crappy speaker. Right. You want to really hone your skills and be a great speaker to know that you're commensurate, you're worth what you're charging.
Right. So when we talk about, building a platform or you starting out, is it required that someone have a book or have some sort of authority in the venue or in the industry that they're talking about? Like, for instance, we're talking about business and stuff, but there's someone out there that's like, hey, I would love to talk to people that do dog sitting or, dog grooming. Like, how do I present myself as the authority in that industry? And then do I even need that before I consider speaking?
I don't think you absolutely need it. There are people who say, well, I have no credibility, or I have no, nothing that would make someone want to hire me. But I believe that most people have a story, and most people can use their story to create a talk that they could go deliver. I've heard a great speaker once said, make your mess your message. Yeah. And so if you have a mess in your life that you've cleaned up, well, that becomes what you go out and you talk about, right? Yeah. So in my case, my message was, I graduated from college, I had a lot of debt. I met a woman my senior year in college who said, get rid of your debt or I'm going to get rid of you. And I ended up marrying her. And for the first 2 years of our marriage, we blasted away all of our debt by living on one income. And it just happened to be hers because she was my sugar mom at the time. Nice to find one. And but that was my mess, right? My mess was I had all this debt. My message was I cleaned it up in 2 years, and you can do the same by following these principles. And that's what became the book, right? I just told that story in the book. The book we self-published, and we cut our teeth on that, figuring out how to do it and do it efficiently. The books cost us somewhere around $1 to $1.50 each to print, and we sell them for $10 each at the events. Yeah. So it was sort of this figuring out of how much am I worth? Can I build a product? How much is the product going to cost me, and what can I sell it for? And can I make enough using those two variables to make a living doing this? Yeah. And at some point it was like, I can.
Right. So like now let's transition, because we don't have a huge amount of time here at this table. I want to do this sort of thing more.
Yes.
And you've heard a little bit of, I just spoke a few minutes.
Yep.
Not the best speaker in the world, but definitely it's something I would love to hone my skills on and be more interactive face-to-face with our audience instead of just speaking to 50,000 people over this microphone every single month. So what kind of advice would you give to someone like myself in my shoes, wanting to target someone like in the millennial entrepreneurial space?
Yep. So that's the group you want to talk to, or millennial entrepreneurs.
Or not even ones that are entrepreneurs already, or small business owners already, because a lot of the people on the podcast are already business owners, but I'm talking even about students that aren't even considering entrepreneurship, and they're thinking, I'm doing this 3-4 year degree in something I hate, and this isn't for me, because I was there and I know what it's like to be there.
So my recommendation to you, if you're open to it, here's some food for thought. Yeah. I think your message should be directed to college students. I think you're going into the business school, and if you went out and you reached out to the dean of the business schools and said, listen, and how old are you, Mike?
21.
Okay, so I'm 21, I have a business, this is what I do. I'm super passionate about helping other people pursue their own entrepreneurial endeavors. Yeah. Here's what I've learned along the way. I want to come share this message with your students. Yeah. And I have a really impactful life message that I think they need to hear before it's too late, before they're too old to even care, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you're going to go and you're going to deliver this message. And I think you build your business on the fact that you're going to capture names and data from all the students that you're speaking to.
Right.
And the goal would be to say, hey, if you have a business idea, or you want to be part of our incubator, or you want this free PDF or this video on how I figured out my passions, plug in your name and email address, we'll send you this thing. You're going to build this massive list of early 20-somethings that have an entrepreneurial passion, but don't know necessarily how to pursue it. And then you could teach them how to pursue it by creating a membership course, or at the very least, a coaching package or something that you're working with them on a regular basis. To get really good at speaking and working with that group, it's fairly simple. Just pursue mastery in it. Yeah. So the way I did that, as I mentioned a couple days ago, is I
watch Comedy Central every single day.
Watch Comedy Central as much as humanly possible. And that was back when they actually had comedians on all the time, But I watched comedians. I watched, I found this great website, and it was 101 greatest speeches of all time. And they were speeches like when Bill Clinton spoke at the dedication ceremony down in Oklahoma City after the bombings. And there are like Martin Luther King Jr. speeches and JFK, and I could go on and on and on. I literally had a CD in my car of the 101 greatest speeches, and I would drive down the road listening to these speeches and sometimes get chills because of the way they delivered the message. Yeah. And I was studying, I was just like soaking it in. Why was MLK so amazing in front of a microphone? It was because he painted a picture and he created vision, and he was, it was his speed, it was his pace, it was his inflection of his voice, it was the questions. It was just it's an amazing lesson when you study the greats and know that you have that within you. You just have to hone it. It's a muscle.
You had mentioned something, I think it was you actually, all these things are merging together, these workshops.
Yeah, no doubt.
But about the way that you watch these talks.
Yes.
And was there a specific way how you did that? Like, I remember it was like 3 times you watched.
Yes.
Can you explain what that was?
Yeah, so when I first study a talk, and I love TED Talks. I will study TED Talks until the cows come home. And the way I study TED Talks is I watch a TED Talk all the way through, listening and watching. Then I generally will turn off the audio and I'll just watch. And I'm watching for the pacing across the stage. I want to know, do they go out of that little
That's what I'm really bad at, is I'm pacing.
Yeah, and the reason why is you're nervous. It's nervous energy.
Right.
So I want you to put the nervous energy into like putting all your attention into one person.
Right.
And then shifting to another person and putting all your attention into that person. And I can coach speakers. I can coach good speakers to be great speakers by tweaking a few minor things, like how do they hold their hands and where do they move their feet and why are they shuffling when they should be standing still.
Right.
And so those things are really impactful. You don't realize it, but an audience is watching going, I don't really know why I don't trust this person, but I don't really trust them. And it may be because you're pacing back and forth like a nervous cat, right?
Right.
So first I watch it all the way through, then I just watch, and then I just listen. And I'm listening again for pace and inflection and tonality and all those kinds of things that make a speech great.
Yeah. So when we talk about you've come in this studying all of the speeches and all, can you give like 1 or 2 tips for a very, very beginner to kind of make a 10 or 15% marginal difference in the way they speak, and then give us like a 1 or 2 points that you are nutty and nerdy about that like you would tell someone that's already an amazing speaker, but they can do something a little differently?
Cool. So the entry-level speakers, the challenge for most of them is they're not fully confident in their message. And part of that could be because they just haven't delivered it enough. They're not as practiced, and they haven't stood in front of a mirror and delivered it and delivered it and delivered it. So what I tell them when you're just starting is build a slide deck if you have the ability to build a PowerPoint or keynote presentation or Prezi, whatever you're using. Build that out and use that presentation as a crutch to remind you where you're at in the program. So if that means you have 10 or 15 more slides than you need to understand that you're going to spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes per slide, but the bullets or the photos or whatever you have on there is only meant to make you confident in the message.
Right.
Because timing is really important, right? If you're given 45 minutes, the number one thing that poor or beginning speakers do is they go over time or they don't have enough material.
Right.
And I always assume that I probably have 2 to 3 minutes per slide. So if I know I have a 45-minute slide, I'm going to have 15 slides to go through. And I just use that as a metric of how I'm going to do. And over time, you'll know what 3 minutes is.
Right.
So one of the ways to test yourself is to say, I'm going to talk extemporaneously for 3 minutes, and you hit go on a timer, and you just talk, and you stop when you think you're at 3 minutes. And then you keep checking you don't check it when you're talking, but you begin checking to see how close you are to that 3 minute mark, and you'll just know, you'll get that timing down.
Yep.
And then the thing for advanced folks is we all have a learning modality. So we're either visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. Visual people see, so they need to have a slide deck in front of them, and they want pictures. They don't want words. They don't want to, they don't want death by PowerPoint. 10-point font and 20 bullets on one page.
Yep.
They want images, and they want stories, and they want their mind to be activated in that way. Auditory folks love a good story, but it's got to be verbal. And they don't want someone who's monotone. Right. They want pace, and they want inflection, and they want all that stuff. The kinesthetic folks need to be stood up every now and again.
Right.
And you need to high five your neighbor, and you need to give them an arm bash or a knuckle. You need to do something that makes them active.
Right.
And if you do that, and you do that knowing that you have all three people in your audience, at the end of that session, they'll go, God, that was awesome. I don't know why, but I loved it. Yeah. And I can't put my finger on exactly why I loved it, but I loved it.
Yeah.
And I've done it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and the people that come up afterwards will say, and I don't mean to brag or boast about this, but they'll say, you're one of the best speakers I've ever seen, and I don't know what it is. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, I've done thousands of hours of practice. I know the learning modalities, and I'm doing minor tweaks. I'm standing in one place. I'm moving, I'm talking directly to one person until they break eye contact with me.
Right.
And it's those little things that when you make those minor adjustments, it's a major, exponential step in your speaking.
Just the first one you mentioned is about just knowing your message. And when I'm kind of thinking about doing this and crafting my pitch to a dean or an activities director, should I already have specific speeches or themes that I'm about to speak about or that I can relate to and create a speech around? And I guess this kind of relates to anybody in their specific field, if they're in self-improvement or anything like that.
You bet.
Is it monotonous on your end and on the viewer's end to continually hear a message that's been repeated, or does it sound regurgitated in any way?
I think the best of the best speakers can deliver their message again and again, and it never sounds regurgitated. Right. There's a guy named Andy Andrews who wrote a book called, the name just jumped right out of my head when I said it. The Traveler's Gift. Okay. And Andy Andrews is an amazing speaker. He's delivered that talk 100,000 times, and every time it sounds like it's his first time. And so the best speakers will do that. I think when you're calling that dean of the business school or whomever it may be, what you want to do is maybe not have the whole thing written out, but know bullet points of what you're covering. So as an example, I do a program called Networking Power, and someone will say, well, what exactly is it about? And I'll say, hey, listen, there's a lot of hidden value in your network. And I teach people how to unlock the hidden power in their network. And I give them a sense that that social capital is more valuable than gold and silver and any coin or currency in the world. Yeah. And it's the residual value in our relationship. Mm-hmm. So I give them 3 or 4 bullet points of what I'm going to talk about. And then I reinforce the fact that here's what I can tell you. They will love it. They will laugh. They will learn, and they'll walk away, and it will be impactful for them.
So at the actual event that you would go to or I would go to, what's some of the residual things that you can do to create value, whether it be monetarily or getting emails from people? What do you do beyond just the money that you get from the dean or from the school? What can you do at the actual event?
That's a great question. I wocan say that you're looking for assets, right? How do you gain assets from doing the talk? And assets to me are things like photos. Mm-hmm. So can there be a professional photographer there who can take shots of me in the crowd and be really creative about it? Right. Can I get video? Mm-hmm. Is there a videographer that we could have come in and actually shoot the whole thing on high def video? And can I get that? Could I get the list? So if you're talking to an association or a corporation, how many people are in attendance? Can I get their names and email addresses? Right. It's things like, can I get the audio? But you could bring a Pearl recorder, a Sony recorder.
Didn't you say something about that? You would tape that, what is it, to the microphone? You would tape your own recorder and listen to yourself?
I generally would either put one, you can put it on the podium.
Right.
And it'll pick up, ambient noise and your talk. Or I would sometimes wear a lavalier microphone and plug it right in so I get really clean audio. But I will listen to my own talks over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I realized that audio becomes a product, because people who will say, oh my gosh, I heard you at such and such and I love that message. Can I get that somewhere?
Right.
And I was always like, no, you can't. I mean, when I deliver it, you can.
Yeah.
And then I realized, well, God, I'm probably missing out on how many $10 sales.
Yeah.
If all I did was record the message, burn it to a CD, have them printed on demand, and have 50 of them at every event.
Yeah.
And it's just like a book. If you don't want to write a book, record yourself speaking, put it on a CD, have it shrink wrapped at a place called kunaki.com, KUNAKI.com, and sell them for $10 a piece. It looks like a $20 item.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I want to say thank you, Adam, for coming on the show. But before we let you go, what was something that you learned at FinCon and throughout the last 3 or 4 days that you didn't know before, or has been revolutionary, you think you want to take home? I know, were you in Grant Baldwin's?
Yes.
So we've been listening to Grant Baldwin and all sorts of cool people here this week. Pat Flynn, all these guys. And so what was something that you kind of pulled out and then you already know you're going to use for your business? From
I pulled out a number of items, right? It's hard for me to list just like 2 or 3.
Yep.
I'm building a content site, and it will be really robust, and I'm going to have a lot of different features in there. One of the things that I've figured out is I need to be very strategic about how I'm creating posts. And I'm inspired to do more of this from what I've heard here. And the thing is creating posts, and creating posts that can be monetized.
Right.
And I was blown away by the fact that there are some bloggers here who might have 8 or 10 posts that are monetized in one way, shape, or form. And those 8 or 10 posts provide all the income they need for the year.
Yeah.
Just 10 posts.
Yeah.
Now they may have 150 or 500 posts on their page, but those 10 that they've written and done really well with, they're promoting on Facebook, they're promoting on Pinterest, they're pushing through Twitter. And I'm thinking, how many of these am I missing because I just haven't monetized it?
Yeah.
I haven't put affiliate links. I haven't sponsored the posts, any of that kind of thing.
Right.
I'm going to do a lot more of that and build a lot more passive recurring revenue.
Do you already have an email list and everything? At these events, do you collect those?
Oh yeah, I do. And my email list is I would say somewhat cold, and that's my fault.
Right.
So one of the things I'm going to do is really focus on building out my drip list, and how am I touching these people on a regular basis. They will get a newsletter on a weekly basis from me in the end of 2016 and into 2017, and I intend on selling them a whole lot more. I mean, I've been told if you have 10,000 people on your list, you ought to be making $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I'm not making that from my list. I am making that in speaking, but I want to make it from my list as well.
Yeah, awesome. Adam, before we let you go, where can people kind of contact you? I know you have your site, adamspeaks.com, if people are interested in kind of what you do and if they even want to book your site to speak. So can you tell us a little bit more how we can connect with you?
You bet. It's at adamspeaks.com is sort of my main speaking site, which has links to a lot of my other products and services, one of which is a documentary that I'm promoting really heavily right now.
I wanted to watch that. I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's an
what
amazing,
is that exactly?
Well, it's a 53-minute documentary on student loan debt, and it's called Broke, Busted, and Disgusted. And the site for that is brokebustedDisgusted.com.
Okay.
You can go and either download the film or stream it from there. And that actually, we're looking on a number of different broadcast channels. So we may be on CNBC and Netflix and Hulu and iTunes and all of that in the very near future. Right now it's online, and we're pushing it into high schools, colleges, churches. We want everyone to see it because it's really impactful. And the student loan debt epidemic it's seriously problematic.
Oh, yeah.
To the extent that it could be the downfall of some of our economy.
Yeah, totally. All right, I appreciate it.
Dude, thanks, Mike.
That was awesome. So before we finish up, I do want to say if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe on the YouTube channel. I'm going to start live recording or live videos of our podcast. So when I am doing the podcast here in my office or at my work office or wherever I'm at doing the podcast, I'm going to actually video it live on YouTube and then also record the video on YouTube. So you'll definitely want to subscribe to the channel. Just go onto YouTube and Google Mike Andy's Business Bootcamp and you'll find it. Also, I definitely want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to go to freshbooks.com/bootcamp, and that's the URL that FreshBooks is giving us for that free 1-month trial of their service. And if you've tried FreshBooks in the past or something, you definitely want to give it another shot because they've completely revamped it just last week. And so if you have any sort of small business, I'd say like their niche is kind of $0 to $1 million in revenue as far as a small business. So they really, really focus on the needs of a small business and what you need to grow. And whether it be accounting software or just your CRM, keeping track of all your customers, it's definitely something I would recommend you getting. Check it out, freshbooks.com/bootcamp. Until next time, folks, be great, start, grow, save your business.